All right, folks are coming in. Hello, welcome. If you are so inclined, please let us know where you're tuning in from, or what brought you here today. Are you a librarian? Do you know someone who is a librarian? Do you just like a good story? Please, please let us know. Talk with us. I mean, we can't see you, but you can certainly put whatever you want in the chat. Well, not whatever, something nice. Looks like we have a couple of librarians. Excellent. All right, and I'll just get started and you all can continue chatting away. Hi, I'm Omar Acevedo and I'm the Literary Program Coordinator at the Mark Twain House Museum in Hartford, Connecticut. Thank you for joining us for this virtual program for How Can I Help You? First, I want to thank our sponsors. Our virtual programs are produced in part with support honoring the late Frank Lord. We are happy to honor his memory with these programs. And we are also incredibly grateful to the Wish You Well Foundation and Connecticut Public WNPR for supporting all of our virtual programs, including this one. Please consider supporting our museum by becoming a member if you're not already. If you are, buy a membership for a friend. All members receive free admission to our author programs, the House and Museum, year-round discounts in the store and cafe, and more. I'll put a link in the chat right now, and you can take a look at that later on. Now on to our guests. Our author, Laura Sims, is the author of the critically acclaimed novel Looker, now in development for television with eOne and Emily Mortimer's King Bee Productions. An award-winning poet, Sims has published 4 poetry collections. Her essays and poems have appeared in the New Republic, Boston Review, Electric Lit, and more. She and her family live in New Jersey, where she works part-time as a reference librarian and hosts the library's lecture series. And our moderator, Bridget Quinn, is the CEO of Hartford Public Library and serves as secretary of the Mark Twain House and Museum's Board of Trustees. Now, like I said earlier, we encourage you to have a conversation in the chat. If you have any really cool, interesting stories from your time as a librarian, please let us know, or as a library patron. If you have a specific question for Laura or Bridget, please post that directly into the Q&A section. It's down on the bottom left of the screen, and you can click on captions to see auto captioning for this program. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, I will be putting a link in the chat to purchase How Can I Help You, their museum store. Your purchase will support our museum and our honored guest. So that is all from me. I will turn this over to Laura and Bridget. Please sit back and enjoy.
Wonderful. Thank you, Omar, and welcome, Laura. It's great to have you with us here this afternoon.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, particularly exciting for me as a librarian to have a fellow librarian here as our guest author. And so before we dive into the book and talk more about How Can I Help You, which I loved, by the way, tell us a little bit, since we have some librarians in the audience, how long have you been a librarian and how did you get started in the field?
Sure. I think I went to get my MLS in 2016. It took me 4 years. I did it very part-time. So I finished in 2020 during the pandemic, finished, virtually. But I had already started working at my local library here in New Jersey in 2018. And I was working very part-time then, like once a month, a Sunday shift. But during the pandemic, a lot of my fellow coworkers didn't want to come back during, understandably during COVID, but I was ready to get out of the house and risk it. And so I started working a lot more often. Now I work twice a week and still like one Sunday a month. So not super long history with being a librarian, but yeah, I've enjoyed it so much.
Well, how wonderful too for your local library to have an author on staff. I mean, that's a real wonderful thing for them to be able to do as well.
Yeah, it's been really fun sharing this whole experience with them. They've been incredibly supportive and excited. So
yeah.
great.
Well, I think we as a profession certainly love to see ourselves reflected in stories.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I was so excited to read the book is because you know, libraries, I think, are probably the most fertile ground for potential stories, for potential authors to develop interesting characters, or, you know, stories that you just can't make up, you know, that they're real life experiences, and they are the most fascinating things that you come across every day. So, and I know so many colleagues over the years have said, oh my gosh, I should write a book. And here you are. You actually have, and that's a wonderful thing. So was there a defining moment in your library experience that led you to write this story, or was it just a kind of a slow burn over the years to where it's to the culmination of this novel?
It was kind of a slow burn. I definitely, when I started working in the like first day, maybe one of my colleagues told me that someone had died in the public restroom downstairs, and like a patron, you know, very sad, but it stuck with me, just that thought of like someone dying in a public library in the restroom. So I had that thought. And then once I started working there, especially when I was working there more often, I kind of started to save all of these fascinating interactions I was having with people, with patrons, and I was amazed, like Patricia in the novel, who is kind of struck by the difference between what she's learned in library school and the reality of working in a library.
Yeah.
I was really struck by it too. Patricia does not like the difference. I love it. I love everything, all the strange calls I get and interesting interactions. So I started keeping a little notebook where I would just jot things down that happened. And I was thinking, like, I have to write, like you were saying, like everyone does, I have to write something about this. And I didn't know if it would be an essay or what it would be. And then slowly I came to, oh, I'm going to set this in the library. This is what I'm doing.
So do you see some of yourself and Patricia? Obviously the idea of like kind of furiously scribbling in a notebook at the reference desk certainly resonates.
Yeah, I don't do that. I mean, I kind of wish I could. I wish, but that's like my fantasy self, definitely just sitting there scribbling and being a terrible employee. But I don't do that. I can't do it. But definitely a lot of me is in Patricia. You know, she is frustrated, and I think any writer, no matter what level they are, has had so much rejection, so experienced so much failure that they can identify with her. And so I put a lot of that like angst into her character, and also, yeah, that she's a librarian and she's somebody who's kind of torn between being a writer, her writerly ambitions, and then her job as a reference librarian. And there's kind of a struggle in the book between them.
Right. And let's talk a little bit more about the characters. I obviously I find both the lead characters, both Margot and Patricia, very compelling, but it's interesting how both of them are coming into the story. You've profiled both of them as kind of going through big changes in their lives, right? They are kind of in transition, both characters, but for very different ways, or real, you know, for many different reasons. You know, they're both such compelling characters, as are some of the patrons that you profile too. So tell us a little bit about your character development and what went into your thought process in creating them.
Yeah, well, Margot came to me first. She was the one that I started the book. So I had, you know, my library notes and was fascinated by the library. And then on the other hand, I've always wanted to write a novel about a female serial killer. It's been a dream of mine. I find them really fascinating because they're so rare, right? Because women who kill are very rare. That's like a real rupture in the social fabric in the roles that women are assigned to. So it doesn't happen often. And I found this, I listened to a criminal podcast, which is a wonderful true crime podcast, like really thoughtful, really smart podcast. And early on, they had an episode about Jane Toppin, who was called Jolly Jane. And she was a nurse in the 1800s. She was a great nurse. She was efficient and cheerful. And that's why they called her Jolly Jane. And she was also killing her patients. She was injecting them with morphine and other stuff. And she would climb on top of them and watch them die. I mean, she was a real piece of work. And so at some point, I don't remember when this happened, but I kind of said, oh, she has to be at the library. And she's there. It's like a sanctuary. She's run from this life. And so she was really compelling to me. Just that dissonance between her exterior and what was going on inside. Really interesting. And then as I was writing her, and I loved writing her, I loved being in that voice, but I realized that I wanted more, like something to complement her, and I needed tension and all of that. So I realized I needed a foil, and Patricia became that foil. And I've also always wanted to pit like a writer against a murderer, like to have these two who have some similarities to them.
They do.
And yeah, they do. And to see what happens.
Well, you know what I found really interesting too, is kind of the evolution of Patricia as a writer. As she was gaining some kind of momentum as a writer, she really fell into this moral dilemma. Yeah. Right. And I found that really compelling and interesting about her as a character, because I wouldn't have thought that reading her in the beginning that would be who she'd turn out to be. So when did that happen for you in the process?
Oh my gosh, I don't really remember. I think it came kind of naturally. I mean, it's something that I personally think about, is like, this is a novel. I'm writing a novel about a serial killer. I do have some qualms about that. I don't believe that literature or any art form is a place to be morally upstanding or to be a moral role. I think it's about exploring human behavior and psychology and, making interesting characters. But her qualms definitely reflect some of my own kind of hesitations and worries about, like, oh, should I really be taking advantage of this? Should I really be writing about this? So I think that's where it came out kind of naturally.
No, it was really interesting because I found myself asking the same questions as I'm sure she was asking herself. Like, if I was in that position, what would I do? Because it really does kind of probe that very gray area of, you don't want to give too much away to those who haven't read it yet, but I found that really, really well done. And I think you mentioned this a little bit too, but Margot as a caretaker, she's a nurse, a librarian. Those are very, in many ways, aligned professions, right? As far as like, we want to help people, we want to get people the care or the information that they need to help them. So I mean, your novel obviously turns that on its head a bit and kind of flips it upside down, but it certainly does align with those societal expectations of what role women are supposed to play in our society.
Yes. And she does. It's interesting with her because on the one hand, she is a fabulous and devoted helper. She, in her mind and her worldview, she is helpful. She is taking care of people. But from an outside perspective, she is also doing great harm. And again, what I find so interesting is that reversal of, like, from inside of this socially acceptable role, she is disrupting what it means to be a woman and a caretaker.
Yeah. So I'm sure when this first launched, or when you were able to share copies with people, your colleagues were furiously reading away, saying, "Oh my gosh, is that me? Or is that me?" How did your colleagues react to your novel?
Yeah, like I said, they've been so supportive. They really enjoyed it. Definitely were asking, like, is that so-and-so?
Yes.
So sometimes I would say, absolutely not, nobody is in that, this is fiction. And then other times I would mess with them and say, like, oh yeah, you are Margot is based on you. I mean, either one really, Margot or Patricia, you're the inspiration.
Yeah. Like you said, some of the customers or patrons that come in,
yeah,
those tried and true lines that we in public service often hear, that I don't think you had to make up, right?
Oh no, did not have to make those up.
I wish I did.
Them.
Yeah, had even a penny or $1 for every time you do hear that. I pay your salary.
I pay your salary. That's right. Yep, I know. Had to put that in there.
That was good. That was appreciated. And a nod to all of us in the biz.
That's right.
Yep.
That's
so
right.
Tell us a little bit about what your writing process is. How do you approach it? Are you one of those structured people that has a time frame every day, or is the process more organic for you?
I am structured in my practice in terms of that, like sitting down. I do try to sit down 3 to 4 times a week in the morning for the morning hours, because that's when my brain is functioning. So I do try to be structured in that way. The actual writing is more organic. I don't have like an outline, or I have an idea usually, or a voice. In the case of my first book, Looker, it really started with a moment and a voice, and I just kind of let it flow. And I think that is where my best work comes from. I have tried to use outlines before for other projects, and I feel like it kills the spontaneity of it. I like to kind of see where things lead, So, but in terms of like how I sit down, I do reserve time, and I have to do that, or the day is just gone. Yeah.
So one of the other authors we've had from the Mark Twain House Museum is Amor Tolls, and I remember there was kind of a collective gasp when asked about his process, and he says he writes the ending first.
Okay.
Like he knows the ending, and then he goes back and writes the whole rest of it, and sometimes it takes him years, which is understandable since his books are kind of fat.
Yeah.
But I found that really fascinating. And I mean, do you have anything like that, or do you know from the beginning kind of the arc of the narrative?
I don't know the full arc. I usually, have this character and I have vague idea about the arc, but I let it be fluid so it can change. But I do usually get an ending image pretty soon. And for me, it is like an image. So not spoiling anything, but the very, very ending of the book I had, and I just like the last page, I knew that's where I wanted it to be. The people were maybe different, and I had no idea how to get there, but I knew that that's what I wanted. So yeah, I kind of identify with that, except I don't write it first. Okay. I just have it in mind, and I'm like writing towards it, Yeah.
And how much rewriting do you do? So do you do like one full run through and then go back through and adjust, or do you do it chunks at a time?
Yeah, I do a full run through. I find that, and I tell writer friends this who are struggling all the time, like, or writing their first books, like, just get it down, get the awful thing down, the terrible draft, from start to finish. Because if you start to go back and tinker with things, it's never ending, and you may not get to the finish line. I know I would probably not if I did that. So yes, I just write a complete terrible draft, and then I go back, and I don't know how many times I revise, but what I do is I type it up for the first draft, then I print it out, and I go by hand through it very carefully. I find that I really cannot revise substantially on screen. I need, because, you know, I'm older, I don't know. So I need a lot of good pens, and I go through it by hand, and then I type those corrections up. And that's another kind of revision.
Yeah.
And then I do it again, I print it out, go through it. So it is a painstaking process, but it's what works for me.
Yeah.
So, and I love revision. I love it. I find it, I do not like drafting when you have nothing and you're just, I mean, I do, but I don't know. I love revision.
So what was different in the process or the writing of this book compared to your first novel?
You know, I think a lot of what was different about it is once you publish a novel, you have all these voices in your head. You have your agent's voice, you have your editor, like people with expectations are around you. And that isn't the case with the first book. You're writing it in a kind of cave.
Yeah.
It's wonderful and something I don't think I can ever get back to. You can pretend, which I try to pretend, but you know, it's hard not to be writing and think, ooh, is so-and-so gonna like this, or they're not gonna like it, you know. And you have readers too, you're thinking, oh gosh. So that's a huge difference. Looker, the first novel, I would say, I don't know, yeah, I think that's the biggest difference, just the noise.
Yeah. Did you have an idea for each one who your audience was going to be, and did that end up being who you thought, or was that different?
Not really. I guess I don't really think about audience in the process of writing. You know, I'm just writing what I want to write. I don't really think about genre when I'm writing. You know, Looker was categorized as a thriller when it came out, and a lot of people didn't like that it was called a thriller. They were like, this is not a thriller. And it's so tricky. It's so tricky. I think this one fits a bit more firmly into mystery thriller. So I have noticed a lot more happier readers.
Okay.
Who aren't angry about, you know, this is not a thriller. This does not do what thrillers do. I think there's enough in it to satisfy those readers.
Yeah. At what point are you, I mean, well, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I'll ask this one. So this book, How Can I Help You? Are we going to see this one on the big screen? You know, it looks like your first one's being adapted for that.
Yeah, I hope so. You know, it had some early interest, and I know things are happening. I'm always the last person to know what's
oh, really?
But I know that, you know, my book to film agent is hard at work getting it out there. You know, the strike has slowed things down on that front, but I do feel like it's very adaptable. My film agent, when he first read it, said, oh, it's Killing Eve in the library. So I feel like that's a great pitch for Hollywood.
That's true. That's true.
Thing. So yeah, I hope so. It's such a long process. I mean, Emily Mortimer optioned Looker 5 years ago. 5 or 6 years ago. And there've been ups and downs of it. She's stayed very committed. They have scripts written. She's going to direct it and star in it. So it's such a crazy industry. I don't understand it. You would think that publishing would be slower, but Hollywood is slower and more convoluted.
Interesting. Well, I know it takes so much money to do it. It probably takes a long time to raise it. But now when I was reading this, you know, I started thinking about Reese Witherspoon. You know, she options a lot of stories like this, like Little Fires Everywhere. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this would be perfect for her.
Oh my gosh, yes, please, Reese.
I know. So maybe if we speak it to the universe, it'll happen.
Yes, that would be amazing.
Anybody who knows Reese Witherspoon, just get this in front of her.
Pass it to her. That would be great.
So you also write poetry. Do you still do that? Are you so much is right now is your creative flow more novel, or what else are you writing?
I haven't written poetry since writing Looker, so it's been about 5 years, 5, 6 years. So yeah, I do feel like it's not like I've abandoned poetry, but all my creative energy and time goes into fiction now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I spent many years as a poet. That was my identity. That was my life for like 20 years. But then fiction kind of turned my eye, and I had always loved fiction. I rarely read poetry for pleasure, even when I was in the thick of writing poetry. I was always reading fiction.
Interesting.
Mhm.
So one of the things that, you and I chatted about, or you thought is too, is like thinking about companion pieces for this book. You mentioned Criminal, which I love.
Oh, you love Criminal.
I love Criminal. I love Phoebe's voice.
Good.
She's the
Yeah, I
best.
know. She has the perfect podcast host voice, doesn't she?
She does. And I love how those stories are always just kind of a little bit off. Like she just chooses the best kind of ones to highlight that speak to the larger kind of societal issues that she's highlighting. So very interesting. But so what else are your influences? What else do you listen to, read, think about, that may or may not show up in your own work?
Oh, sure. And just to backtrack back to Criminal for a second, when I went back and listened to that episode that I had listened to years before about Jane Toppin while I was writing the book, I wanted to revisit it. It really floored me. I had not remembered this, but the kind of star of that episode is a librarian. And because she like holds the archives of all the Jane Toppin material someplace in Massachusetts. So it's really interesting because at that point I had already made this duo of librarian and murderess. So that was really fun.
It must have been in your brain somewhere.
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was. So influences for this one. Well, one of the first, as I said earlier, I have always wanted to write a female serial killer novel. But of course, I didn't want it to be, I don't know, typical or tawdry or anything. So I had read this novel by Sarah Schmidt called See What I Have Done. She's an Australian writer, and she says she was visited by the ghost of Lizzie Borden, and she felt she had to tell the story. And it's a novel about Lizzie Borden and about what happened that day when her family was killed. And it's beautifully told and really interesting from multiple perspectives, and really just a great book. And so when I read that, I thought, I want to do something like this. That one really stayed with me. While I can't pinpoint other influences beforehand. I'm sure they are many. I mean, Hitchcock is always an influence for basically everything I write. I have loved Hitchcock films since I was young. I think I watched Rear Window like 100 times. I think it is like the most perfect movie ever made. And so Hitchcock's always an influence. But while I was writing this, a friend gave me a copy of Patricia Highsmith's The Blunderer. And it was a book of hers I had never heard of. It's not well known, but she is an influence always. But that one I hadn't read, but when she had just read an early draft of How Can I Help You? And she said, you have to read The Blunderer, because it is about these two men, one of whom stages his wife, like kills his wife, but makes it look like an accident. Another man who wants to kill his wife sees this in the newspaper and understands that this guy has staged this to look like an accident, and gets in touch with him. And they do this kind of elaborate dance around each other that is really reminiscent of Margot and Patricia. It was so fun to read. And, she's like such a master. And then, let's see, I read the library book, Susan Orlean, while I was reading, and that was a huge influence in some ways I can't quite talk about, but also just such an amazing book, And that one also kind of emphasized for me that I wanted to show the library as it is, and not, I feel like there
Oh, no.
Her glasses and cardigan shushing people, but I wanted to show people, this is not what the public library is like today. It's a totally different place, and this is the kind of stuff that happens. So I think that was influential too.
Yeah, wonderful. Good. Yeah, I've been writing all these down, by the way, so now
Oh, good.
I'll read them. Although I did also read the See What I Have Done. That was
You did.
really good. Really good.
Good. Yeah.
I don't know. I've always been fascinated with Lizzie Borden and wondering, what was it that really happened? So that was kind of, an excellent thing to read. Obviously, I know it was fiction, but it was great.
Yeah, I know.
But the other ones look fabulous too. So
good.
Yeah, there is one question in the since we're talking about other books and influences, there was one item in the chat that said, have you ever read Stephen King's novella entitled The Library Policeman?
No,
I have not.
Haven't, but I'm going to.
I know. Good suggestion. Thank you, Terry Tottenham. That was a great suggestion.
That was a great selection. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, good stuff. So I don't know if there's any other questions in the chat, or Omar, if there's other questions for Laura from our audience.
I don't see any questions, but please, if anyone has any, put them in the Q&A.
And there is one, while you're doing that, I have one more influence that I have to mention, which is Shirley Jackson's We Have Always Lived in the Castle, which I also read while writing. And I had been at this moment where I couldn't find anything that I loved that was moving me to read. And so I decided to reread that one, which is my favorite of hers. And I was just blown away by it a second time. And then I decided, I think that there are some really productive overlaps with, Margot's story, and how she has this conflicted relationship with reading, as you might know. And so I put it in the book. And so it became this kind of central piece of the novel, which was really fun to have that in there.
That is fun. Do you have other works in progress? Do you have novels that you've written and you've just like stuck in a drawer somewhere? What else?
I have some drawer books, but I have something that I have in progress, and I was really determined before this book came out. It came out last Tuesday, to finish a draft, at least a terrible draft of the next thing. And so I did it even before my son's school was out. It was like end of June. And I was so happy just to have a draft waiting for me at the other end of this process, because when Looker came out, I think I got really carried away with all of this. And I love doing the book promotion stuff. And it's hard to go from this to sit down quietly, get back into the zone you need to be in to write. So this time I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to have this ready for me.
Gotcha. So. Do you want to give a little hint about what we can anticipate?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, sure. It is. It's based on a harrowing true story that I can't really tell you much. It is about a woman who's being stalked. For some reason, I don't know. I like stalking stories, or I don't. But so it's based on this true story, but it's also I've made her a photographer. And kind of I don't know if you know Vivian Mayer, but she was this nanny in the 1950s who, made her living that way. But she was this incredible photographer, especially like a street photographer. So she would wander around in the city in her free time and take these incredible pictures, a lot of self-portraits, so like early selfies. And she was discovered after she died and became hugely famous. So I kind of used her as a model for my protagonist. So she is this photographer kind of in this hidden way that Vivian Mayer was. She's like a typical suburban mother and wife, but she has this hobby that's more than a hobby. It's a passion. And she has this photography professor who recognizes that talent and really pushes her to do something about it. And she doesn't want to. And yeah, things, and she's being stalked. She feels like she is being hunted down this whole time.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Oh, that sounds great. Can't wait to see that. And
Another
when it
uplifting
comes out.
story.
Yeah. Well, you know, as somebody who loves true crime and all sorts of like mysteries and thrillers, and yet I am a relatively happy person. So it is a kind of interesting thing that, we're pulled to those dark things to want to read them.
Exactly.
But I don't know. It's
True.
fascinating to me too.
Yeah, it can be kind of cathartic. It's like
Yes.
a release of,
Yes.
you can live happily.
Yes, like I can stick all my fears are in a book, and then
Exactly.
the rest of me can be free to live.
Exactly.
Well, when it comes out, obviously, it'd be great to have you back and talk about that.
That would be fun.
Is there anything that I haven't touched on or that you would like to share about the book that we didn't talk about?
I'm trying to think. Let's see. We have talked about a lot of my favorite things. Oh gosh. Oh, just my influences in general. Some of my favorite, actually, maybe some of my favorite recent reads, since we're talking about really dark books.
Okay, I've got my pen ready.
Yeah, get your pen. One of my favorite reads of this year was Our Share of Night by Mariana Enriquez. She is Argentinian, I think that's right. And it's horror. It's a literary horror. But it is just unbelievable. It's so good. It got tons of acclaim when it came out. But it is about this man trying to escape from a family that is basically like Satan worshipers, and he is trying to make sure that his son escapes from them and doesn't have the same fate that he does. It's really like a simple premise, but it is so beautifully done, and it feels so intensely real that I still think about it to this day. It's huge. It's like 600 pages or 700 pages, but oh my gosh, I loved every second of it. Yeah, that was one of my favorites. Another thing that I do like to talk about is genre, and that's a perfect example of, I understand why we have genre, and but I do find it limiting. It can be really limiting for writers when you're kind of put in this box. And like I was saying about Looker, was categorized as a thriller and really did not satisfy the beats of a thriller that readers were looking for. So it was kind of a mismatch. But I think it can be helpful. It can be hurtful. I like to play with genre. I think there's a lot more of that going on now.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot more. I feel also like if you say something's horror or a mystery thriller, it can be dismissed by, serious readers or critics. And that's ridiculous, because there is incredible work going on in all those genres, and sci-fi. I mean, amazing writers. So I kind of wish we didn't have such strict definitions of genre.
Yeah.
For readers.
Well, it makes it harder for us though, right?
I know, it
for
does.
The librarians of the world.
I know.
To put the right little sticker on it, right?
I know. Yeah, I understand it. I understand.
Yeah, but you're right. There's so many, like almost everyone that crosses over in some way.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, people are playing more and more with that.
Yeah. So actually a couple in there would say, there's from Eric Kidwell, said the late mystery author Anne George one time shared an idea for a book plot, a librarian who killed off authors so she could complete the death dates on their author cards in the card catalog. That's awesome.
That is great.
Anne George she was a dark one.
She was very devoted to her job, this librarian. She wanted to,
Yes. And there was something really fabulous. And I as an older person, when I first came into the field, we still had card catalogs. I mean, they were on the way to transitioning, but there was something really quite satisfying about that tactile piece of knowing this is all the information about that book. So
Yes,
miss that in some way.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think Eric also mentioned too that when we were talking about genres, that yes,
Yeah.
that same with young adult.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah. And, and then there's the big divide between young adult and adult, and, what really makes the difference, and does it matter? And yeah.
I love reading young adult books. And actually what my local library, where I live is doing a whole book program, a whole book club for adults that like to read young adult literature, which I thought was a fabulous idea. So
that's very cool. I love that. Yeah, I actually, when I started writing fiction, I was convinced that I wanted to write young adult novels. So I have 2 of those in a drawer. I have 2 of those in a drawer. The first one didn't even get an agent. The second one, I had an agent. He shopped it around for 2 years. 2 years.
Wow.
And during that time, he kept shopping it because we were getting good responses, but no one was taking it. And then during that time, I started writing Looker. And I started writing it as like a side project. I was very like, oh, I'm going to be a young adult writer, but I'm doing this other thing on the side. And I think side projects can sometimes be very, very productive and interesting. Like they can take over what you're doing, because I think when you put all the pressure on something, it can, ruin it.
Yeah.
With a side project, you're just playing, and really you should be playing when you're writing. You need to have that lightness, or it can come off as stilted.
So at what point in your kind of evolution of a writer did you start thinking about, wow, should I self-publish this? Should I try and go the more traditional route? Have you, how did you make that decision, or come to the spot where you decided to go down the path of the more kind of traditional shopping around the book?
Yeah, I think, at the time, self-publishing wasn't as developed as it is now. And I don't even know if I considered it. I just was like, I need to find an agent. Like I knew what to do, and I wanted to go that route. I knew that as a self-published author, you would have to do your own marketing and publicity, and it's a lot of work. So I was pretty determined that I was going to get an agent. And
well, you had already been a published author, right? And
I had published poetry.
Yeah.
It's such a different world. You don't have an agent. There are small presses, and you do all the work yourself. So this has been a real surprise for me too, going from poetry to fiction, where now there's like a whole team of people who takes care of things. It's amazing, where I was used to doing everything for many years.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Omar, any other questions from our audience?
Don't be shy.
Yeah, I don't see any right now. But we do have time for as many as they have.
I'll answer anything, almost anything.
I will put a plug for another a book that I read recently called Hawk Mountain by Connor Habib.
Oh, that one.
Which I would say is also literary horror. I think it came out last year.
Okay.
Maybe early this year.
Hawk Mountain.
I usually don't read horror. I have to be better at, reading certain genres, but I'm scared. I'm a scaredy cat. But it was really, really cool. It was really, really interesting. And, I just read a little faster on the gruesome parts.
I think that literary horror is having a moment. I think
Yeah.
we're going to see like an explosion of kind of those kinds of books. And I love it. I love actually when people call my books horror. Since they're like psychological horror, which to me is the most interesting
Yeah,
horror.
I like that.
Yeah,
So
and the
I love
scariest.
that. And the scariest, that's right, because
Yeah,
Oh,
without a
yes.
doubt.
it's escape from
Um,
your mind.
Looks like we have a question from Eric. I don't recall if you addressed this, but what made you decide to go for your MLS?
That's a great question. I had thought it was something I had thought about through the years. I was an adjunct professor for many years at various schools, and I, love teaching, I miss having students now. But at a certain point when I think I was in my early 40s, it was just clear, like I need to have, and I wasn't, it was really interesting because I had those young adult books and, they weren't selling. So it came to kind of a point where I thought, okay, I need to have a career. My 20s and 30s are over. And we have a young kid, like I need to have a career. And I'd always, thought that I would love to be a librarian. Always had like such a close relationship with libraries my whole life. So it was a natural choice. And so I got in the program. I went to Queens College in New York and really enjoyed it. I was about a year in, and that is when I sold Looker. And again, it's one of those moments where once you give up, once you say, okay, I'm done, I've got to do something, right? And then that happened. So I kind of changed my course a bit in my MLS program. I was going to be a school librarian, which I think I would absolutely love.
Yeah.
So I also began to realize, I was thinking, oh, I'll have summers off. It'll be kind of a chill, library job. As the program progressed, I realized, oh no, I will never write again. So I switched to public library in my MLS focus, and then I started working part-time so I could still have writing time when I finished. But I so enjoyed the MLS program. Such a friendly atmosphere and such cool classes. I took an oral storytelling class that was just fantastic. Just great experience.
That's awesome.
Great.
I worked at the Queens Library for many years, so many of my colleagues now teach at Queens College.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
Every once in a while, I'll make an appearance at a class to, as a guest. But they have a fabulous program. It's just really good.
Yes, and it was a hybrid program, which was one of the draws for me because I could, we moved to New Jersey partway through my program, so. And then, of course, it went all virtual in 2020. So, yeah.
Looks like we got another question.
Okay.
A little bit of shifting of gears. Carla said that unfortunately she missed the first half. She said that she saw the book on Audible. Did you choose your own narrators?
Yes, sort of. They give you a choice. So I had a choice between 4 people. So there are 2 narrators, one for Margot, one for Patricia, which was really fun. I just hadn't thought like, oh, of course they'll have 2 narrators. But yes, so basically 2 different sets. And it was really clear to me who I wanted when I heard them, and that's who I got. So they do give you a little choice. This is, how the publishing world works. They get like for the cover, which I love. Oh, almost knocked my computer off, but they asked me to create a file of covers that I loved, covers I didn't love, fonts and stuff. And they really listened to me. And when they basically showed us this first time. So we were like, wow, you really knocked it out of the park.
That's great. I had no idea that you got to be a participant in that.
Yeah, I mean, they have veto power.
Yeah, yeah.
If they don't like my ideas, then that would be it. But no, they were great and really like it's, I don't like, and don't tell anyone, but I don't like the very popular messy handwriting that's so popular right now. I do not like it. I don't pick up books with messy looking handwriting. So I didn't want that on my book. And so they heard me on that.
But this
that's good
is
to
like,
know.
Yeah.
this aligns with the theme, right?
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Librarian's novel with messy writing on it.
no,
Come
we
on.
like neat things.
Exactly.
Yes. Any of us
That look
were
good on the shelf, right? When it's
Yeah.
like this, you want to be able to read it.
Yeah.
any of us who have to look at books all the time have opinions about them, and
Yes.
I always say, yes, I have opinions about the way the synopsis is written in the book jacket or the back of the book. I have an opinion about
yeah.
book cover design. I don't like busy book covers. I like simple, clean
Yes.
book
Me
covers.
too.
So
I know. I think now we're moving into a phase of kind of cartoonish covers, like lessons in chemistry
Yes.
and yellow face. I think
Mhm.
those are kind of setting because they both like done so well. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that kind of cover, which is interesting.
Yeah, especially since graphic novels have become popular along with YA and
Right.
others with across all generations.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite librarian questions is when it's usually from friends who are parents and they're like, oh, my kid just only wants to read graphic novels. It's just, I try to get him to read something real. I say, no, don't do that. Just let them read the graphic novels. Graphic novels are awesome. It's funny.
Some of the best literature is in graphic novel format, without a doubt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, because if you try to put someone into force something that they're not interested in, you're just gonna kill the love of reading.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
We don't want to do that.
I know. Really don't want to do that.
No.
So we're in our final few minutes. I don't know if anyone has any more questions, or Bridget, if you have any more questions for Laura.
No, I'm so excited to have her here. And you know, I think this is such a great novel. I'm going to obviously recommend it to all my librarian friends, and hopefully be able to see Laura at an upcoming library conference.
That would be so fun. And now I
great.
really want to go after what you said.
Oh yeah,
I'm gonna write my next novel.
Exactly. I think that's true. But there's also regional ones too that would be easy.
Yeah,
you know, New Jersey, every state has its own
Jersey.
library association, and you know.
I know. I need to get
having
active. I need to get active in this.
Yeah. Well, I will definitely keep you in mind for future ones when I can recommend
Thank
people to come. So
that would be great. That would be great. Thank you so much. I see Eric put ALA and
San Diego. That is
Yeah.
going to be a good one. That is one not to miss.
That's true.
Well, excellent. Thank you so much, Laura, for joining us. And thank you so much, Bridget, for acting as moderator again.
I love this. This is my next career. I want to be the next Terry Gross and
I love
interview
it.
people.
Good. Thank you both so much. Thank you for having
Yes.
me, and thanks to everyone for coming.
Pleasure. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us, and please join us again for an author program, or visit us at the museum, and also visit your local library.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Buy this book. It's really
and buy
good.
the book. Yes. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you, Laura. So nice to meet you.
Thank you.
So much.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.